to shy society. I wake up in the morning and the first thing that I see is a bunch of cranky people on a full bus.
Alright everyone, this is the Existentialists and I am your host Tony B. We are the YouTube channel ready to engage in difficult conversation, both political and social. And today we have a special guest with me, a great friend of mine. Everyone, please give a little round of applause for now and then the grand applause later to Anne Arkist. Anne Arkist, thank you for coming on today. We appreciate you.
Hey guys, this is Anne Arkist coming to you from the dark side of the moon here on the Existentialists. What is it? I'm in beautiful downtown Berwyn. I'm so excited to be on your show, Tony.
It's awesome to have you. I always encourage people, let's get down and get to the truth of our opinions, the nature of humanity, and the systems that surround our lives and intervene in such a way that destroy, or for some, bring hope into the future of our existence, right? And so Anne is one of my favorite participants for the Existentialists because Anne, I believe, brings a spectrum of looking at the political world and the human species in a way that many people ignore. So Anne, we have a couple topics I want to cover with you using your lens, using the political spectrum you bring to the table. I really want to explore these various topics from COVID-19 to the clashes in D.C. to the experiment in Portland, Oregon, right, with Antifa and Black Lives Matter. But first, let's really try to dive into the lens of Anne Arkist. And I want you to sell your perspective on the world as best as you can, your labels, because I feel if I label it, it can bring a lot of fear into the hearts of children. So Anne, please take it away. What do you stand for? What are we here talking about today?
So, of course, my name, Anne Arkist, is a pun on the word anarchy. I am a full-fledged voluntarist. I do not support hyphenated anarchism. There's no such thing. You can't just hyphenate anarchism with something and then say, okay, now this is true. So I'm what you call a black flag anarchist. I don't take sides with anybody. I am an individualist. I have my own opinions and my own thoughts and ideas, and I follow the non-aggression principle, which is do no harm, take no shit. So when it comes to anarchy, yes, anarchy is chaos. I totally agree for our owners. It is chaos for them, not us. Not us regular people. Because, see, to our owners, anarchism means that they cannot control you. That means they'd have to control themselves. And the reason why they control us is because they have lack of control for themselves. But what's the best way to trick slaves into producing more for their owners? Tell them that they're free. Just tell them they're free. They'll be happy. They'll do whatever you want after that because they think they're free. They're free to leave and be someone else's slave because this plantation is the best plantation in all the world because you have rights and privileges only this plantation can give you. So when they talk about that anarchism is chaos, yes, of course. It's chaos to the people that control us. Because then that means that they can't control us. They can't get out of us what they want to serve themselves. Now, another way we label anarchism is voluntaryism. People who are afraid to use the word anarchism use the word voluntaryism instead. I don't really care. I'm not really particularly afraid of voicing my understanding and my faith and my ideals in something. I don't want to say the word believe or beliefs because in order to believe in something, you still have to be lied to. So I don't need to believe this. I know this. There's a big difference between that. Now, anarchism teaches about natural law. And natural law is a very important principle and ideologies that we are completely being kept they're like hiding it from us because the opposite to natural law is what we're living under right now, which is called positive law, or man's law, if you want to be biblical. But in regular Black's Law Dictionary, it's called positive law. It's, we drop a policy and we say, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. That's what positive law is. Whereas natural law relies on natural consequences, cause and effect, to deal out justice, basically. You don't have to make a whole justice system over an already made justice. It was already here, Natural law is also based on human nature, not on culture. Natural law, there are principalities that are inherent. They are knowable. They're immutable, which means that they do not change with time. They do not change with region. They do not change with ethnicity. It's always going to be the same. And the problem that we run into a lot in our society is that it's okay for us to do stuff here, and it's not okay to do certain things over here, when that's called moral relativism. And moral relativism basically means that it's okay for me, but not for thee. If you can catch where I'm coming from on there. Real laws, or true law, has to be universal. You can't just sit there and say, it's okay for me. It's not okay to kill people, but it's okay to go to war as long as the government says it's okay to kill people. You can't do that. That's an opposition of what natural law is, and that's violating everybody's natural rights, including the person who's committing the act itself. You're violating their moral standards by making them kill people. Rights cannot be given or taken, not even consensually. You don't have you cannot give a right to a person that they already didn't have. There is no such thing as the right to kill. I don't have the right to kill, but cops have the right to kill. Government officials have the right to kill. See, that's also creating more hypocrisy in the system. That's reinforcing the idea that legitimate use of force and violence is okay, and we all just have to accept it.
Great, Anne, thank you for really trying to lay out what's going on for voluntarism, right? Which can be originally phrased as anarchism,
or self-governance. Self-governance.
That's the most common phrase, right? Voluntarism is kind of this a new age way of really looking at what has always been the way that human society should live, right? That's kind of voluntarism implies we should have it within our own human nature to just build without a power that we can't see that rules over us, telling us we know how you should build. You don't know best for yourself.
Well, it's not even that they have no right to tell us what to do. It's the very fact that they don't have a right to use quote unquote legitimate force. Legitimate force could be anything. It could be anything like getting stopped by a cop and him arresting you because you're speeding, which there was no victim, there was no crime, and now you're being arrested through the use of legitimate force. It's okay for the cop to pull you out of the car. It's okay for the cop to kidnap you, basically, and hold you for ransom, aka a bond, because you were going too fast. You didn't crash into anybody. You didn't hit nobody. There were no victim, no crime. And it's totally okay to use legitimate force to enforce said such policies. That's not right.
Right. So that's what I want to make sure we clarify about all this. Is essentially what's being opposed, which is voluntarism is a proponent of opposing the monopoly of violence that is owned by the government.
Exactly. If the government wants to own violence,
very real. Just for anyone that's listening, violence is monopolized legally by a legal system created, which is the positive law that Anne was explaining. So violence is monopolized through this positive law, meaning that government is the only one that has legitimacy of using violence against human beings. When humans do it, though, they are within
Individuals.
this
Don't even
system.
say humans.
Yeah.
Say individuals.
Yes.
Individuals. Just acting. It's insane. And it really upsets me every time I think about it. I almost want to cry because my child has to grow up in this freaking world and have to endure that. And I don't want her to be scared of some man in a costume, because that's what a cop looks like to me, okay? It's a man in a costume with a badge and a gun. At the end of the day, it's another man with a gun. I have to trust my life to this person who doesn't know me, who doesn't care about me, who at a drop of a hat will sit there and say I'm a threat to their safety, and they'll blow me away. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But if I sat there and said I was afraid for my life and my safety, and I did the same thing, all of a sudden I'm going to jail because I'm a cop killer.
Let's get into a little bit, because once again we want to see how much we can break this down.
Okay.
Anyone listening, always make sure to leave comments, and always make sure to share the content and invite yourself to join us in conversation, right? I want Anne to be able to lay out the fundamentals of voluntarism frequently. I don't want to just be this one kind of take. So, but let's try to really rinse it out. Let's rinse out the idea as best as possible, and let's apply it to the real world scenarios.
If you really want to get down to the nitty gritty of what anarchism really is, it's the idea of self-ownership, which is in opposition to slavery. Okay, we live in a slave system. They don't need to trade us on little soapboxes and on ships anymore. They could just trade us all on the stock exchange. That's how they do everything. Like, self-ownership is the idea that you own yourself, you own your labor, but you are also solely responsible for your choices. So dealing directly cause and effect, being directly responsible for your choices. Whereas in the system we live today, people are not truly held accountable for their decisions. They're almost in a safety net. Almost. They're not even They're not dealing with the direct consequences of their actions. They're getting cushion from it. That's why nowadays, why do you think criminals repeat offenses? Because they keep them in, they let them back out, they keep them in, they let them back out, and they keep thinking it's okay, but they're never really, you think putting somebody in jail is truly holding them accountable for their actions? When they could just go back out and reoffend. A pedophile is always going to keep being a pedophile because they're not being directly held accountable for their actions. Yeah, you can put them in jail for a while. It'll keep them away.
Here's the thing, I don't want to open up new doorways, but since it's brought up, right? Let's consider what is the ultimate consequences of stealing in a natural law society. If the individual is completely free, what does the punishment mean for that person?
Well, if you were owning a store and somebody came by and stole something from your store and you catch them, you just have them work it off. You don't have to use violence to solve all your problems. A lot of people think it's going to be just like Hammurabi's law, where we're just going to chop people's hands off and Sharia law people all over the street and stuff. Your moral standards don't fall off the face of the planet when government falls off.
So it sounds like reconciliation between the individuals is the only true justice.
Right. So they call that... So the type of justice system we live in is called what is it called? Adversarial justice. That's what it's called. You got
winner takes all.
Right, adversarial justice. Now, the justice system that falls under anarchism and voluntarism is what's called restorative justice. Restorative justice holds the actual person accountable for their crimes through dialectics. Through direct dialectics and direct, dealing with the consequences. Even for murder. You could even use it for cases of murder where the person's being directly held accountable because they are there with the family, dealing directly with the family. There's not going to be the state of the state of Illinois versus so and so. You know what I mean? It's going to be directly between the people who were directly affected and the person who committed the crime. When
Yeah,
you
so
use,
I'm a big proponent of restorative justice.
Yes.
I'm against punitive justice.
Thank you.
While I see punitive may having a role in certain circumstances because we have to transition, I'm more restorative than anything, right? I think people have an opportunity to reintegrate into society and make life
And
flourish.
redeem themselves. They should be like, we need to go
Yes.
back to a reputation-based society.
Okay, but here's where I think where we find common ground. Let's try to flush out this idea of the thief still. Well, I'm sorry for labeling, but the person that steals, if they refuse to cooperate with the person that catches them, they really do not want to reconcile.
So,
Who
once
forces
you...
that person to find the restorative path
Mhm.
under natural law?
Right. So usually what happens after that in said quote-unquote natural law society, we let that person go. And they go off into the distance and everybody's like, oh my God, he's just going to go out and do it over again. It's like, no, we know who this person is. We don't have to do business with this person anymore. If this person, like, if he does it to this town A and he goes to town B will find out about it eventually and he will get kicked out of there too. You know, what is it?
When you say kicked out, does that mean the
like
use
a form of mild
force?
form of exile? Like, you're not gonna sit there and like gather in town with pitchforks and say, "Oh, we want you out of here." But basically, make his life difficult. Don't give him a job. Don't sell him food. Don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, until he reconciles.
Until
what he
he
has done.
reconciles, exactly. And if he goes to town B and town B doesn't know what he did, you know, and he goes and repeats it over there, the same thing's going to happen to him, and it's going to happen to him over and over again until he learns his lesson or becomes or reconciles with what he did, because at the end of the day, that person not only committed a crime against another person, but they also committed a crime against the self.
Mm-hmm. And let's say now, because this can go deeper because of the
Yes, it
web
can.
and complications of our lives. Even without a government system, let's just say the system of the family, one of the most natural systems that can exist and something that needs to be protected. If a teenager steals, but their parents are very well contributing members of the society, they essentially will protect their child. Will they also be like let's say banished because they don't hold their child accountable?
Well, in a natural law system, the way how that would work would be and kind of sounds shitty, but the child's life, if it's a teenager especially, the child's life would be made difficult. People are going to know what he did. They're going to know the truth. And like I said, when you live in a reputation, and listen closely, when I say a reputation-based society, it means like, do you do good business or bad business? And obviously this kid is doing bad business. Nobody's going to want to do bad business with another person.
Well, the other bad business people would want to do bad business with the bad business people.
Well,
right? Wouldn't a black market suddenly emerge in some form? This is why I want to flush this out, because it's a silly mental exercise, because when it comes down to creating that better society, I think that's why I come from a statist point of view about a system that can provide the basic necessities for people to live, but also hold them accountable. But I see where you're going, because it is truly rooted in the restorative.
yes.
Right? How can you not get the community involved in the restorative, but these arbitrary leaders are the ones that represent everyone in true nature?
And
they
that's what it
represent their
is.
own interests.
When we're dealing with positive law, that changes with time. It's so arbitrary.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
And it doesn't represent the same generation when
does
those
not.
laws were created.
It does not, because at the same time, those laws and policies they change so fluently. You can literally go to sleep and wake up a criminal almost overnight here in America. Like a law that they wrote overnight and passed overnight, something you were doing yesterday is now illegal today. Now you're a criminal because you did it.
Yeah, it's real, and that a generation ago is the reason why you're a criminal today,
Exactly.
my boy.
Look at how much we really
real.
didn't know. Like, look at how much we truly did not even know, and our parents. Look at how much our parents didn't even know.
One of the like less authoritarian situations in America, right? Something not too severe, but it's close to my heart. Is the legalization of marijuana. It seems that the older generations, well, they were lied to about the real danger behind marijuana. Suddenly, they're beginning to embrace it. So conservative ideas of marijuana use is becoming weaker and weaker. And suddenly it's because of this new wave, this generation, and the old generation's trying to fight. And now there you go. We have a realization that your parents, maybe your older brothers and sisters, are in jail because of a stupid plant. And now people are making tons of money off of it. It goes to show that you created an arbitrary rule that ruined real lives.
Exactly.
Because of a positive law theory.
Exactly. You think you're stopping other things from happening when you're creating more crimes in the process. Or not even
Right.
crimes, just laws to be broken to be considered crimes.
And that's something the beauty about the voluntarism lens is this non-aggression principle. Right? Under a positive law, the aggression is real because while you had stated earlier, while an aggression principle doesn't mean you literally get your ass whooped. Like you can if you resist, right? You will get your head cracked if you resist. But there are systems in place that force you into a corner and they box you in and they make you feel depleted of all freedom and all potential for a better future. That's one of the dangerous things about an aggression principle is it doesn't have to be visibly violent, but it destroys the human spirit. So non-aggression is I think I've learned this back in the Ron Paul days, was that force shouldn't be the instrument to create a better society. It should be the commitment of the individual to build with their neighbors and, take that cultural shift. The culture is always shifting, but is it possible to take that? And now I have to bring that to you. What do you foresee for the future? And then we can transition into our ideas about real-world scenarios that are taking place upon us right now. But what do you foresee the future on voluntarism? What do you think the steps look like to really start building to something like this?
Well, voluntarism is actually the best of both worlds, actually, when it comes to the left-right paradigm. We actually are the best of both worlds, kind of like the libertarians. We're actually both like a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. So with anarchism, there are no borders. Free movement of wherever you want to go. If you know it's a bad area, don't go over there. If you know it's a good area, go there. But you should be able to travel freely at your own risk. I like my dangerous freedom because I don't want peaceful slavery. I just don't want that. I want to be able to acquire things on my own, in my own ways, not the way the system provides it to me. And when it comes to a system like this, there should be an opt-out button. But see, most people would say, they would take it as, oh, well, if you don't like it, you could just leave, which is very un-American, very unpatriotic, un-American thing, because we literally fought a revolutionary war to not have to do that.
Yeah. And I forgot what founding father it was, but they believed that revolutions should happen often.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to be violent, but the people should have the right to pretty much reestablish a new form of governance in whatever form they wish it to take.
Mm-hmm.
In the future, in the near future, maybe it happens where the human consciousness wakes up and realizes that our commitment to ourselves is essentially going to be outwardly expressed, that what's best for the individual is going to be best for a collective effort. Is that a potential way of forming that narrative?
Yeah. So,
because I don't want to make it sound like it's collectivism.
Right. So the whole point of anarchism is to
collective unity.
Okay, so let me put it this way, like, because a lot of people also see like anarcho-capitalists, anarcho-communists, and let me just get back into that, because anarchism does not concern itself with a specific type of economy. Now, everybody tries to like associate society and economy as like the same thing. Anarchism doesn't it doesn't concern itself with economics, because it's left up to the individual as to how wealth is created and how they value it and how they perceive it. Which is why I don't support, of course, Antifa. I denounce them. I also denounce Black Lives Matter, the organization, not the ideology, though.
And we're going to get into that a little more in our segments. But I hear where you're going. Essentially, the individual will establish their value and how that value is compared to the collective around them. But ultimately, that's the true freedom of the person.
Right. They should have that choice.
What way do they view themselves? And that's their choice, instead of society telling them how they should view themselves.
Yeah. And when it comes to like methods of control, when we're looking at a oppressive, tyrannical system like democracy, because democracy is very oppressive. It's mob rule. You know, let me do a little exercise with you. Tony, is it okay for me to come to your house and take your wallet without your permission?
No.
That's stealing, right?
Yes, stop it.
Now, if I come back with 30 people who totally agreed that I should take your wallet, should I still be able to take it then?
No.
That's democracy in a nutshell. Because I got 30 other people who agree that I should take your wallet, and they all agree with me. There's 30 other people that says it's okay for Anne to steal Tony B's wallet. And I show up to your house and say, see, 30 people said I told that I should take it, so give it to me. I'm going to take it now. That's democracy. That's how democracy works.
Wouldn't individual society ultimately fall into a democracy?
Now, I'll explain the difference between a direct democracy and a what we have right now, which is called a representational democracy. Now, we want to live in a direct democracy. A direct democracy means that instead of waiting to pick and choose which person is going to solve the problem for us, we're just going to think of solutions, take a vote, and vote on the actual solution and execute it as we the people. That's the difference. That's the big difference. Representational democracy means we're going to vote in a slave suggestion box as to which plantation owner we feel represents us the best, and they're going to go up there on the little Capitol Hill and represent us and be fair to us, and we hope and pray that they're going to represent us and be good masters to us too. We hope and pray that they will. But they intend to be our masters. They intend to.
So in one scenario, with the established republic we have today, a group of people, let's say 60 out of 100 people choose this one leader to represent them. That 60 is imposing this one guy or girl,
or the 40%,
onto the 40%.
So right? The 40%, so the way how it's supposed to work is that the 40% does not have to listen to the other 60%. They go on with their lives. But now when you got the bigger group trying to enforce it on the smaller group, which is originally the way how this republic was meant to work. It was supposed to protect the minority, the individual, from the majority, the mob. So
yes.
if I did not agree to these rules, if I did not agree to this guy representing me, if I did not agree or consent, I go on with my life. I should not have to worry about persecution. I shouldn't have to worry about the law coming after me. I shouldn't have to worry about any of that because I did not consent.
Well, you mean in terms of like that social contract theory, right?
Exactly.
That you were born and all of a sudden these rules already existed without you having any participation in any of it.
Right.
So I just that lays out the current republic. I just want to make sure that in the republic, the minority clause of all the discussions in the Federalist Papers, the minority was essentially protected because of a three-branch system. Those checks and balances were ultimately the way that the minority was protected. But the minority would always lose in local elections. The majority is still existent and still always maintains this power grab in this adversarial
right, but
system.
the thing is that the minority is also legitimizing the majority's power by saying, okay, you won, all right, I'll have to follow through with it, and that's it. You know, when you should just turn around and say, I don't care, walk away from it, and it's not even part of your life anymore. That's how I feel about this selection process that we're going through. I didn't even vote for anybody. I've been over the age of 18 for 14 years. I've not voted in one selection once. And people boo at me for it. And I said, I do this to protect your rights. If I have the right to vote, I have the right to not vote.
Yeah, voter shaming is abysmal at least, right? But I want to take this illustration about the majority coming in and the minority not having that right to walk away from it all. Because at the end of the day, the minority can choose not to participate.
That's because after the Civil War, see, we lived in a republic right up until the Civil War. We lived in a republic. If you didn't consent to the rules, you don't have to follow them. They left you alone. You lived in your little house in the woods in your little homestead area, and that was it. All right? When we had the Civil War, what happened was we were the United States was many things during the Civil War, but United really was not one of them. Like, America was many things, but United was not one of them, okay? Because it was the Civil War. It was Americans killing Americans, all right? And after that time, you know, it split north and south. And they're like, well, what can we do to keep this country together? Well, they had to incorporate us. They had to turn us into a company. They had to incorporate us like a corporation. Did you know that the office of the president was actually considered like a mascot more than an actual position in office? Like, the president really had no real power. It was a mock position created to mock the king.
And it was created to appease those that thought having a king in the United States would be a good idea.
Well, yeah, because they're like, oh my God, the Europeans are going to come back. What are we going to do?
Yeah. We need some type of central authority, at least mask it.
Our government god must be more powerful than their government god. That's basically what happened.
And then that was the fault of the founding fathers, right? They created a monster they could have barely predicted would come to be.
Well, that's the problem was the electoral system that was created was actually in a prototype phase. That wasn't even how, like, the electoral system that we're using now wasn't even truly ratified and approved into our Constitution, because that was not even how they really intended it to work. You know?
Right.
It was
essentially
just like a
they wanted
prototype.
the business owners to really have the final say. Anyone that owns property.
The only thing that stays the same is the Bill of Rights, the Constitution itself. Like, and that's the thing, when people get the Constitution mixed up with the Bill of Rights. You know, and I want to be clear to our listeners right now. A piece of paper does not give you your rights. You are born with them. The minute you fall out of your mother and your feet touch the floor, you are a natural person. A natural person of America, not a U.S. citizen of the United States of America Incorporated. All right? So a piece of paper does not give you rights. And people have to understand that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, does not give you it. It is just a list that, like, lets you know what they are. What are your rights? That's it. But
what are they? And the government cannot interfere with these essential rights.
Right. And even our founding fathers knew that even a small amount of government was not a good idea, because I'm trying to remember which founding father said it, but they said, I think it was Washington, saying that, okay, yeah, you're going to use government, but government's dangerous. It's like playing with fire. You're going to get burned. You know, and that's how he described it. It was like playing with fire. So, like, in order for the system to stay in control, it has to employ methods of control. One of them being their most favorite tool, the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution, or what we like to call polarization. You can polarize anything. Now you got a pro this and a con that. You got a plus this and a minus that. You know what I mean? Like, they create these polarizations in dialectics to keep us distracted amongst each other, fighting. Like, when people ask me, like, things like abortion and little things like that, it's like, you're talking about people making personal choices, and now you want to enforce your personal choice on everybody else through the use of government. That is wrong. That's immoral. You can't just take a personal choice and now make it the law. Because maybe that's not the right choice for another person.
Would that work the same way under a real democracy, or a direct democracy? Would the individual that doesn't agree with the majority vote in that direct democracy, would in some way they lose something that's dear to them?
Are you like talking about like the people who all agree going to show up with torches and pitchforks in their yard and like, you didn't agree with us?
No, voluntaryism lens, right?
Right.
If we live amongst each other and I'm of the minority, I didn't want to do what the rest of the community is doing when it comes to collecting rainwater. I don't want to collect rainwater, but the community agrees collecting rainwater is going to be a responsibility for all of us. Is me simply leaving that community the only solution, or what happens in that scenario?
See, I wouldn't think that would be the case. If somebody doesn't want to participate in a certain thing, they shouldn't have to. Nobody should not be forced to do something that they don't want to do, or it does not benefit themselves in any way, shape, or form. Everybody's going to find their little niche of where they feel that they could, where they can give and where they can take. There's always going to be a natural order and a natural flow, as long as we're not using force to do so. When you're using force to do so, you're telling that person that if they don't collect rainwater, something bad is going to happen to them. And not only that, you're going to use other people who know this person to enforce that upon that other person. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
So in a regular society, they would just leave you alone. Like, you just basically wouldn't have the benefits of everybody collecting the rainwater. You would just have to do it yourself to yourself, or whatever way provide for yourself. Like, it's like, yeah, it's almost like every man is on their own kind of thing, but at the same time, like, a community gets put together because we all agree on certain rules. Now, the thing is that anarchy does not mean no rules. It just means that there's no rulers. There's nobody on top of us. Everybody's going to agree to the rules to some shape or degree, and the main rule is going to be, don't hurt me. Okay? The first rule is always going to be, don't hurt me, and I'm not going to hurt you. That's always going to be the non-aggression principle. And then after that, anything else we as a community agree on is always going to be on a voluntary basis. If you disagree, you should never be afraid of people coming after you because you don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
You should never be persecuted unless you committed an actual crime of violence or something. An actual crime. If you don't agree with something that everybody else is doing, you should not be scared of any kind of persecution whatsoever.
So let's take this opportunity to transition because along your final thought on this idea is that polarization is a very real tool to control.
Yes.
So we're going to transition into the topic of COVID-19. And if you're listening, remember, this is Tony B with the Existentialist. I'm on YouTube. You can always subscribe. And we're on Facebook. Like us, comment, share. And, of course, Anne Arkist is our guest today. So, Anne, where can our listeners find you?
I'm also on YouTube. You can look me up at Anne Arkist on YouTube. I also do have an Anne Arkist Facebook page. And I'm also on a WHAM Radio Facebook page. And so mostly just Facebook and YouTube for right now. And then I will be having a fully running website very soon, and that'll be topoflinepro.com.
And make sure in the description box we'll leave some links there for you so you can find Anne Arkist. And of course we'll leave some lovely links to any extra videos on our channels that are worth viewing, of course, for your entertainment and to join this deeper conversation. Okay, so we're back at COVID-19, and what has happened because of this this virus, it's done a number of things, but I think the two main things is one, it has instilled fear into the populace, causing control to purposely leak into the hands of the ruling class, the government institutions. That's one thing it's done. It's caused fear. It's called panic, right? And then the other line, it has sharply polarized people between political ideologies. So a virus itself has infiltrated another form of virus, a political party. It has really polarized us to the point where there can be no agreement about something that may threaten our lives or may be a hoax on the extremities, or somewhere in between, right? There seems to be a compromise somewhere in the political communities, but for the most part, we're starting to see these extreme views rise up, where one side says shut down.
Yep.
Now that I'm painting that as an extreme view because it comes with real life ramifications.
Oh yes.
And so on the other end, the extremity is it's all a hoax. COVID-19 will not kill anyone. I paint that as an extremity because I'm in a disagreement that it's not serious. I don't know if it's serious enough to shut down. But let's get into that conversation. And from a voluntarism lens,
okay.
First your thoughts on this whole thing, wherever you land, and bring in the lens of voluntarism.
Sure. So right now I'm going to refer to it as CON-vid-19 because I don't want to keep triggering the YouTube algorithms. And it is a con. And I'm not going to sit there and downplay whether or not this virus exists. Of course the virus exists. It's a real virus. It's got a patent. It really exists. You can go on Google and look up the patent for the virus and see that it was created here in America and it was sent to China. And they got to ooga booga it over there with their little petri dishes and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to actually from a voluntarist perspective, people need to be free to react and to do the things that they need to do in order to engage with what's directly confronting them in their own environment. So if there's a virus going on and you think you're living in a neighborhood full of people who are sick and you want to move the heck up out of there, you should be able to. None of this like telling people, first off, let me just back up a little because I want to go back to January when all this was coming out and stuff. Remember when DJT, our reality puppet president right now, he went up there and he's like, we're not going to worry too much about it right now and this and that. Like, they didn't want to worry about it at first, and then it became a problem. Like, the fact that they're able to get on a TV screen and talk to us like evil villains with their little threats and stuff, like, and tell us what we can and cannot do. Like, people need to be free to react. They need to be able to react and deal with what's in their faces. Like, you know, there's a mass shooter coming down your street and you're telling everybody, no, you have to self-quarantine inside your houses, don't run, and you're going to go against your natural impulses to, like, run. That's kind of my take on the whole, like, virus thing. Like, I don't want to say I'm a masker or an anti-masker. I'm an individual. Do I choose to not wear a mask? Yes, I do. But it's my own personal choice. Will I sit there and promote other people to wear a mask or not wear a mask? No, I will not, because it's not my body. It's not my body. It has nothing to do with me. It's not an extension of myself. I don't have the right to do that or make those calls. You know? And when it came to, what is it, Dr. Fauci, oh, that whack job. You know, when Donald Trump came out there, he said, these are guidelines. He said, these are guidelines. He didn't say this is, these are requirements. This is, like, you have to do this. They said they were guidelines. A guideline's like a sheet on your doctor's office, like, wall suggesting to wash your hands. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But you don't see the, like, sanitary police coming through the doctor's office because you didn't wash your freaking hands. Like, that's what a guideline is. Like, a guideline is just something that you can follow to refer to. Oh, well, I don't... If this situation is happening, what do I do? Here are some guidelines. You know what I mean? But do you... should you, like, be fined or jailed or whatever because you don't follow a guideline? No, you should not. You should never be afraid of any of that. You know? That's like... looking at the fire drill sheet in the school, and when we have a fire drill, you know, it says everybody has to go outside, and 2 people were stuck in the hallway. Well, if it was a real fire, they'd burn, but if it's just a drill, like, they shouldn't have to worry about getting arrested and going to, like, school jail because they didn't follow the guidelines of the fire drill.
So I want to, let's try this then. COVID-19 businesses, the factor of businesses. Right now, I think we can agree, at least in narrative, that what the government is doing to these businesses is a interference in their freedom to do commerce.
Right, it is.
Right, so
it's
telling them that they have to, in order to have business open, they have to make people stand 6 feet apart. They have to make people wear masks.
And the fact that these business owners are listening to the government telling them what to do is kind of sickening because, okay, where I work at a casino or one of those gambling slots plays. My boss didn't just wake up one day and said, I'm going to require my employees to wear masks. No, he got a threat letter in the mail from Governor Pillager saying that if you don't follow my guidelines, here we go, guidelines again. If you don't follow my guidelines, I'm going to fine you. I think he said it was like, for us, if we were caught doing it, I think he said it was like $7,000 in fines.
Damn.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah. And, you know, my boss he felt like he had no choice but to hang the piece of paper up in the office for all of us to see and say, okay, guys, I guess you're going to have to follow this because apparently I guess I don't own my business anymore.
So here's my point is that while I think the narrative to that has its accuracy, the government's interfering in their ability to do commerce and serve the community.
It is.
On the other end, it doesn't seem that individual rights, those that are just consumers, are the consumers' rights being violated?
Yes.
Well, isn't it a free market system that if the business makes this requirement, that's their right to do so?
Right.
Now, while the government's forcing the business, it's like a trickle-down effect.
Put it this way. The way how Donald Trump said, I'm going to leave it up to the governors to figure out what they want to do. Remember when he did that?
Yeah.
It should have been the governor sitting there saying, we should leave it up to our businesses to figure out what they want to do. And then the businesses should have acted accordingly. They should have, you know what I mean? Instead of shutting me down for 3 months or 4 months and pay me $600 a week to sit on my ass and watch fear porn all day on TV, how about we just follow the guidelines? We could have had less than 10 people in our store. We could have practiced the whole social distancing crap like throughout the entire shutdown. We could have done the whole spiel. But no, they forced us. It's a planned, organized, partial shutdown of the entire world economic system. It's not just us that they're shutting down, obviously. This is happening in other countries, too. Look at Australia. They're getting manhandled right now by their tyrannical government.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to go into the whole lens of voluntarism, is that, let's say that this is the point of trying to do these thought exercises, is if it's a voluntary society and the businesses aren't being forced by anyone, but they make a collective decision, say, hey, this is the best interest for our community, would that essentially be violating the consumer's rights?
Oh, well, if the business owners decide, okay, yeah, we're going to shut down and we're going to go along with it, yes, I definitely do believe it is infringing on the rights of the consumers, for sure. We need stuff. When the riots came through, after we had half the shutdown and the riots came through Berwyn, I could not get to a store for miles around here to get milk for my daughter. Just milk. Because everything was shut down. Everything was shut down so tightly. That violated me, for sure. And that violated my child, who was in need of goods and services as well. Like, what is it? Infringement does not stop at the tail end of these businesses being told what to do. Because these business owners not only turn around and say, okay, fine, government, we're going to do what you say. They don't realize that they're stepping on the toes of the very people who make their business the business, the customers. How do you think I feel? I work at a gambling slots place. I'm not allowed to serve food or drink right now to any of my customers. You know how badly my customers so badly want a cup of tea or a cup of coffee while they're gambling, and I can't even service them the way I normally would? I can't even work to my best ability.
That's actually strange. That's really strange, isn't it? I mean, I thought restaurants were allowed to serve drinks and food.
Well, let's see. For right now, from what I'm understanding what's going on here in Berwyn, a lot of restaurants are disobeying. So let's applaud these Berwynites over here. They're doing everything they can over here to say, screw you, Pritzker, we're not closing. All the restaurants that are around my gambling place are serving their customers indoor. They're serving full course dinners, drinks, everything. I applaud these business owners. And also, I believe Lovero, our mayor, he did say that he's not going to enforce Pillager's rules, his mandates, because guess what?
What do you call him?
Pillager.
That's Governor Pritzker for everyone.
Yeah, JB Pillager, guys. So, like, Lovero said, I'm not going to enforce Pritzker's mandates. You know why? It's not that Lovero is so generous to us Berwynites. It's not that he cares about us. He cares about the money. If these businesses cannot sell anything, they can't pay their taxes. And if they can't pay their taxes, this guy Lovero is not getting paid.
Oh, also in his re-election. He's running again in 2021 February election.
That's right. And you know, believe it or not, his office, his like main political office is like right around the corner from where I work too. It's crazy. I literally am like 20 feet away from this guy's office.
What happens? What happens if? Because I think I know some Berwyn folks that are totally against Lovero not keeping things shut down.
I know people. Let me give you an anecdotal from work, because I work at a gambling slots place, like I said. I talk to people all day. I'm a customer to customer. Like, everybody loves me at my job. They love to come and talk to me to tell me everything. So one of my customers, I'm not going to mention his name, he works for Loyola Hospital as he drives the van from hospital to hospital, bringing supplies and stuff like that. But he does not drive the ambulance. He's just a van driver. Okay? He also works part-time security for a restaurant across the street from my job. He's also a security guard there. And just to let you know, this restaurant is also not listening, and they are also serving food and drink. So I was talking to my customer. He's sitting at the machine. He's playing his game, and I'm talking to him. And just to let you know, he's a Biden supporter. Just, let me throw that out there. He's a Biden supporter. Me, I'm Ann. I'm friends with everybody. So I'm talking to him, and he's, he asked me, he goes, Ann, is there any way I could get a bottle of water, a cup of coffee? And I said, no, I'm so sorry. I can't give you anything because my boss doesn't want us to, serve anybody right now. He doesn't want to lose his license. And he goes, such a shame, Ann, because I go to these other gambling places, and they're giving food and drink and stuff all the time. And I go, which ones are you going to? So he gives me the list of all the gambling slots he's gone to. And I said, wow, that's great. I'm actually shocked to hear that these places are serving food and drink. Maybe I should go suggest to my boss that we should start serving food and drink here too. And I go, well, how about this altogether? We should just reopen the state. And as soon as I said that, he looks at me. He's like, no, Ann, I work for the hospital. Do you know how many sick people there are in there? And this, and that. And he's explaining to me, people are sick, people are dying, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting here looking at him like he's a thousand-eyed demon because he is literally talking about why we should stay closed, but he's eating and drinking and gambling at places that serve food and drink. He literally security guards for a restaurant that gives food and drink to their customer and seats them indoors too. So where does the hypocrisy end?
Right. So much for the outrage.
I know. I'm thinking all of a sudden this guy's agreeing with me or something like that. And the minute I said, oh, we need to open the state, he looked at me. He was so serious. I almost thought he wasn't going to tip me. And he's one of my regulars. I love this guy. And he's like, no.
That's the problem with all of this. Because, okay, I've had trouble with this idea. I really believed at first in February. I started hearing more about it in February, and I was downplaying it. I was like, no, that's gonna go away. Look at I think the Obama administration, they dealt with the H1N1,
yeah,
and as serious as that was, it got dealt with in a responsible manner. I guess they might have sucked at some things, but then March hits and everything's happening now. I'm like, shit, I was wrong. Well, maybe it's still not that serious. Maybe we'll be out of work for maybe a month and a half. Okay, and then I get sick in April. I get sick in April. I'm coughing blood. I have the worst symptoms you can think of. Okay, now I'm taking this serious. And then May comes along. And the federal government, in my view, while the conservatives and the right-wing Republicans, for me, a lot of the fault lies in their hands because of their anti-science approach. And they really don't like fiscal spending when it comes to very liberal ideas. But when it comes to their wars, their Wall Street executives, their donors, and their real estate people, they're open to flooding the money out. So I take a lot of blame to them. But at the same time, for me as a left-winger, they gave a $1,200 stimulus check. And then that's per person, adult person. And then they gave trillions of dollars to all the corporations.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking to myself, your half-ass attempt, and then, even in the state of Illinois, your half-ass attempt didn't persuade anyone that you had control over the situation. You left us still vulnerable by shutting down and giving us peanuts. Now, I just come from the position like the European nations and the Scandinavian countries who essentially said, hey, you know what? We're going to give you 80% of your income to just stay the fuck home. Don't make this spread. But then there were still essential workers out there. And now that's what the problem is. How the fuck do you determine what essential is? How do you get to determine that people don't need X and Y as a service? But suddenly, E and F were great services. So I had an issue there, right? My mind was like in a conundrum. But I was adamant that in that time, that should have been the shutdown, and they should have done a better job at shutting down instead of what Illinois tried to do, right? Pritzker and Lori in Chicago and the governor, or what do you call him? You call him what? Pillager? The pillager. He decided to shut down, and then he flirted with reopening, and he did, slightly, to simply say, you know what, we're actually going to close down again. I'm really mad about that. I mean, obviously the shutdown itself gives enough person a reason to be angry. But if we were going to shut down, we should have done it for real, and we should have done it sooner instead of doing it now, where you already flirted with people's income, and there was no safety net for them. But and now, what are they going to do? They're going to defy orders, and I don't believe them.
Nobody has the right to tell anybody to stay home. And nobody has the right to tell anybody to don't stay home. You don't have a right to tell somebody to work, and you don't have the right to tell somebody to don't work. Nobody has the right to do that. And the fact that that fat pillager went up there and took it upon himself to tell everybody what to do, from a voluntarist perspective, that man is an evil villain on a TV screen threatening us.
He pretty much was. He was threatening. He said, if you don't take this serious, I'm going to pretty much do worse. And the Mayor Lightfoot did the same thing. Like, you better start taking this serious or else. So they definitely are using their governmental authority to...
They're abusing it.
Yeah, they're using it as their tool to punish you. But here's where I want to get from you is, do you think there should have been no shutdown at all?
Right.
Would that be a voluntary stance?
Everybody should have been free to react the way that they wanted. If they wanted to stay home, they would have stayed home. If they went to work, they would have went to work. If you really felt that you were that scared to go out into the world and think that you're going to catch a virus, then stay home. But you shouldn't be forced to stay home. That's the problem. That's the difference. You shouldn't be forced to stay home. Okay.
Well, no one's being forced to stay home.
Yes, I was. I was being forced to stay home. It's not like I couldn't go out and get another job. I was furloughed. I wasn't just laid off. I was furloughed.
But you can still go outside.
That's not the same, though. And who wants to
go
out? Who wants to go out in the dystopian society that's now the United States right now? Who wants to go out there now? When you go out there, everybody looks like whack jobs right now. Who wants to go out there anymore? I don't even want to be around those freaking weirdos. And I'm pretty weird. I'm an individual. And I'm pretty freaking weird. But even me going out there, and if I'm telling you you're being weird, that's pretty intense. That's pretty serious right there. You want to take something seriously? Me telling you you're weird should be taken seriously.
Well, because I'm really interested in, at what point, where does the science rest in the lens of a voluntary society? What is science and how is it applied?
First off, there's a difference between science and government-promoted science. Don't ever trust the settled science that the government presents you. You're not, okay, like I said, when we're talking about Dr. Fauci, everybody, I was talking to my manager about this the other day. Me and her we went into an argument about it. Not really an argument, but we were just talking back and forth. But it was kind of funny. I told my manager, I go, Chris, do I have the authority to give you medical advice? She's like, no, you're not a doctor. And I go, neither is Dr. Fauci. He's not an MD. An MD is not a substitute for, or a PhD is not a substitute for an MD. He's not a practicing physician. He didn't have thousands of patients in his care, that he's treated and helped and stuff like that. No, he's always had a little fancy smash little office in the back of a building somewhere where everybody sends him the data. He's got no practical knowledge of anything because he's never practiced. He's just been given the data. That's not the same.
Are you dismissing his credentials? His expertise in viruses?
Yes, because there's a difference between being a medical boots on the ground doctor and a PhD of a person who just sits in an office and deals with data all day.
Also understands how viruses work.
Again, but he's not in the hospital dealing directly with the patients who are actually going through the outbreak. He's not physically dealing with it.
Well, there's a lot of scientists that aren't interacting with clients, though.
Right. So where he gets his information from, where he, like, again, a PhD is not a substitute for an MD. He does not have legal authority to give us medical information. He's not a practicing doctor. He's not an MD. He's not a medical doctor. A PhD is like, okay, so a PhD is basically, you got your master's degree. If you did an additional 2 years, you get a PhD. But that just means that you specialize in something. Yeah, you're going to work your life around it and stuff like that. But if you're not boots on the ground practicing it day to day, and if you're just sitting in the back, third hand experiencing it, then you're not really a professional in your field. You can't sit there and say something third hand and act like you're doing it first hand. You can't do that.
Okay, I don't know what Dr. Fauci is doing personally.
Okay, so Dr. Fauci...
here's the thought, though. He's not in the labs. He's not in any of the labs analyzing any of the data.
He's just in an office, and they fax him the paperwork. He's no different than what administrators are to teachers.
Yeah.
That is what Dr. Fauci is. He is an administrator for doctors. But he is not the actual doctor who's physically seeing everything, who's taking the temperatures, who's measuring the patient and actually diagnosing and doing, the actual work. That is not what Dr. Fauci does.
Let's throw Fauci off the list then. What about the doctors that are watching and experimenting with the virus?
Like who?
This is good. Fauci. Let's throw Fauci off the list of someone to listen to. Who cares about what he says? The scientists in the lab really taking a hard look at the virus.
Mm-hmm.
If they're the ones presenting the information on the lethalness of the virus, and they're the ones really advising on how it's going to spread, hey.
I want to present some ideas. Let me just put this in perspective for you from some of the information that I learned. Especially with McNeil Hospital here being our hospital, our local hospital between mine and your town. Did you know that McNeil Hospital just got in trouble for fudging their numbers for the CON-vid cases? They were just found out that that they were lying about how many actual cases they had.
The hospitals themselves?
Well, McNeil in particular, McNeil Hospital, and we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk locally right now. So we're gonna talk about this locally, and then I'm gonna show you exactly how this is going on a nationwide scale. So locally here at McNeil, they just got busted for lying about the total cases that they had for CON-vid cases that they have recorded here at McNeil. They were trying to say something that they had. It was like 500 and something reported cases. Most of them were done without a test. Just to let you know. They didn't even have a test. Did you also know that for every hospital that reports a case and with or without a test, they get $17,000 for every diagnosis of CON-vid with or without a test? So all they have to do is say you might have it and put it on your paperwork. They submit it. They get $17,000 funding. There's a lot of incentive to making these numbers go up. All right. Now, you get $17,000 for every diagnosis. Now, as a new incentive, you get $32,000 additional for every person you put on a ventilator on top of that. There's incentives to making these case numbers go up.
Yeah, no, it's true. I've seen some of the reports, and so I think that's the hospitals, right? They're even lying.
They're lying. McNeil just got caught lying and fudging on their numbers. I have a friend who works there. He works as a laundry. He's the one who cleans everybody's clothes and their blankets and stuff. He works there. He's been working there for over 10 years. He was there during the buyout by Loyola. He was there for the whole transition. They were broke basically, this hospital was basically broke. They barely had enough money to keep the original doctors and staff that they already had. Loyola had to boot almost everybody out. Okay? Nobody knows about all this stuff that happens at McNeil, but I bet you money, with all that money that they lost, they had no problem listing everybody as a CON-vid case so they could get that money.
Most definitely.
There's incentives to everything.
Does that dismiss what scientists that study the virus are saying? Because they're getting money too, possibly.
Right. Now, so you look. Now all you have to do is play the game, follow the money. Who's paying for this research? Who's paying for it? Who benefits from all of this? Who benefits from the shutdown? Who benefits from this virus? Who benefits? Whenever you have, like, you don't let a good crisis go to waste, okay? Even Rod Blagojevich, that was like one of his favorite famous lines. Everybody quotes this. You don't let a good crisis go to waste. And our owners will not let this crisis go to waste. They're gonna pinch our freedoms and our liberties so hard. Oh, and it's coming in this second wave is probably what's gonna do us in really quick. Because we don't have it in us. I mean, we spent the last part of the lockdown protesting and being angry about absolutely everything. So we just wasted a crap ton of energy on absolutely nothing. You know, got absolutely nothing out of it. And here we are going for a second lockdown. Now, you know what kills people more than a virus? Starvation.
Well, there's the obesity.
Suicide. Depression kills people.
Yes,
and this is all stuff stemming from the shutdown. Okay, yeah, I could get sick from a virus and get better, but am I going to have a job when I get better? Am I going to have food in my kitchen when I get better?
No, you won't. And that's one of the things that I advocate from a big government perspective, is that should be the responsibility, because that is at the core, the strength of our nation, the moving and interacting population. The people themselves are the strength of a nation.
You can't have government run food, because if government's in control of food, then they control the people. Like, you control people's stomachs, you're going to control the people regardless, because one, the government's only going to say, well, this is the only way you can have food. They're going to start making people, like, pay for licenses to get food, basically. You can't do that.
I mean more so disaster management. So imagine if
like
there's a bomb that sets off. It's America is attacked. There is a disaster management response. So any disaster that occurs that threatens the core of the nation's strength, which is the people, there should be a disaster management response. The government has failed in this pandemic.
But the thing is,
and they often fail for many disasters, to be honest.
It's not the government that's failed. It's the people that failed themselves, really, because it's our responsibility to be prepared for these things. It's our responsibility to know what to do for these things. It's not, every time we turn over to the government and said, okay, well, we don't want to be responsible for these choices, and we don't want to be responsible, that means that whenever the government decides to make a choice, it's going to be enforced on everyone through the use of violence, okay? Which means that nobody's going to have an opinion or anything, because it doesn't matter at this point. And then on top of that, you're only going to be given, their way of having it. So let's talk about the disaster management. Disaster management could be anything. It could be FEMA coming to your farm, taking all your food and saying, we're commandeering all this food you're growing here to give to the starving people over here. Government should not do that. It should not even have the right to do that, because if you wanted to give the people the food, you would give it to them.
What if you don't want to?
You shouldn't have to either. It's your stuff. You can't.
Okay, so
you can't
let me ask
force
then. Does that mean that the people that pretty much have nothing,
right?
The communities that are shattered,
okay,
way before the fucking COVID-19, what is their last resort to maintain their survival?
Okay, so let me put it this way. Because, hold on, where's my notebook? Because this actually kind of goes into, like, the Black Lives Matter Antifa thing. And why Anarchism does not concern itself with economics. Because again, you yourself as a person have to value things your own way. And it is your responsibility as an individual to provide for yourself and to give to yourself the things you need. And a lot of the stuff that we need and what we not want is totally obtainable and within reach of every individual's hands, as long as government is not there to infringe on those things. You can't use government to force housing, to give housing to other people. But what you can do is allow people to go and obtain housing however way they want. If they want to build a shed in the woods, they should be able to. If they wanted to live under a log, they should be able to. If they wanted to live in an actual building, they should be able to. But you cannot use the force of government to obtain these things because it's still theft. It's still immoral. So, for example, the organizations like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, they are not self-funded organizations. Okay? These are organizations that live off of donations from external authorities. People donate to them. And what does that mean when they're not self-funded? It means that they do not compete in the free market. They don't provide any goods or services. They don't provide anything to anyone. They want us to provide for them. That's not the mentality that a real anarchist would want. Okay? When you go out and provide for yourself, you should be able to barter and trade freely for the things that you want. The real have-nots in society are our owners. And I'll tell you why. When everybody always comes up to me and they say, Anne, how are you going to do with the have and the have-nots? And I said, well, the real have-nots are the people that are really living off of us. They want us to believe that someone like me who's using food stamps is the problem. Okay? I'm the problem using my, $250 benefit every month, but you have no problem when a politician comes by and steals thousands upon thousands of dollars of our own hard-earned tax money and pockets it in their pockets. But you want to say I'm the problem with my little measly $250. So the have-nots are the people who are in control. Because without us, they have nothing. They don't. And the people that we say that we believe that don't have anything have more than them. In all reality, they really do. Because the quote unquote have-nots, like the homeless and stuff, believe it or not, they have more freedom than us people living in an apartment. To be honest, they don't have to worry about rent or anything or tie themselves down to anything. They have more freedom than kids at this point. But
no one really necessarily wants that.
Right. No one wants it, but the thing is you gotta work for it. You gotta develop yourself, develop your skills, make yourself more what is the word? You could compete on the free market. You know, that's why, like I said, anarchism doesn't deal with economics, because you have to leave it to the individual. Obtain as many skills as possible. Develop yourself as a human being. It forces the individual with force. It doesn't force them with an external force of threat. It doesn't use that. It uses the fact that's that you have to work for all the stuff that you want to motivate you. When everything is given to you, I mean, what's that experiment called? It was called the rat utopia. Okay? It was a science experiment. Now, if we want to bring science into this, it was a science experiment called the rat utopia, where the scientists built the perfect utopian rat world with all the free housing and all the food and all the water. Do you know how many generations of rat it took before that before the entire species went extinct in that little world? 3 generations. It took three generations of mice before they went completely extinct after they were given food, water, shelter for free all the time. They didn't have to compete for it. They didn't have to do any work for it. They were just given it. Took 3 generations of mice before that population of mice went extinct. And the very last generation of mice, they actually called them the beautiful ones. Because those mice were so vain and so selfish, they weren't trying to have sex and make babies anymore. They weren't even trying to keep the group going. That's where we are. We are in the dying phase of American society in this rat utopia that we live in. Okay?
Except for immigrants. Immigrants are still fucking like bunnies.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because they still follow natural law. Natural law dictates, it's your body, your right. If you want to make babies, make babies.
So I want to go into that idea of natural law versus positive, because in the natural law, which would be that the individual would aspire to create for themselves so they can be sustained and they can prosper, right? And then the positive law creates situations where some of enough of the control, even if it's a little bit, it's too much, right? The control is taken out of the hands of the individual. Mm-hmm. That positive law creates that scenario where they almost become, I don't want to say useless, but they lose something, right? That's what's kind of the theft of freedom from the individual. Mm-hmm. In this natural law society, it would seem that those that don't, pick up after themselves, they're going to be left in this society relying on natural law. And we can look at the chimpanzees, the study of chimpanzees. Seems like they're going to cause a ruckus in a natural law society if that is their instinct, right? And if that is what they learn from their environment.
But it would still, but the, what is it? The second principle, the natural law still applies. The non-aggression principle, do no harm, take no shit. Now, if these guys want to cause a problem, don't forget, you're going to be dealing with a population of people who are armed and well knowledgeable, because in a natural law society, everyone is armed in any way, shape, or form. Okay? You cannot sit there and tell people what weapons they can and cannot use. If they're comfortable with something, that's what they're going to use. Okay? Now you're dealing with a society that's armed. Okay? That are being vigilant. Okay? That are looking out for themselves and for each other. I think I was talking to my boyfriend today or yesterday about this. About how, nobody knows anybody anymore. We don't know our neighbors. Because he was talking about, he was because we got an Amber Alert yesterday. Some kid went missing. They were taken in a white pickup truck. We got the Amber Alert. And we, of course, we have a kid, and my boyfriend looks at me and he's like, I really hope this would never, happen to us. And I'm like, this is why people need to be vigilant and we need to know each other. Because he's like, I would hope that if some guy was coaxing my kid at the laundromat or something, that somebody would notice. And I said, nobody's going to notice because, one, we live in these mega cities. There's too many people. Nobody knows each other anymore. So, no, you know what I mean? In town, everybody knows the kid and who the kid's parents are and who are the people that come around this kid. And if a stranger comes into town, everybody's watching this person because you're not from around here. They're not going to sit there and point their guns at them and say, you can't come in here or anything like that. But don't think that they're not watching you and watching everything you're doing to see if you're somebody who's worth having in their town in the first place. All towns need to be like that. We need to be more vigilant like that. We need to be watching people that are coming into our towns and getting to know them so that way we can figure out, is this a person who's violent or non-violent? Is this somebody we want to keep in our town or we don't want to get comfortable here?
Yeah, of course. That I think locally organizing a commitment to each other is going to be important.
Getting to know each other.
But you're going to have competing communities, and it just seems that there's another part of natural law. Remember, positive law is this human world that was created.
Yeah, that's all man-made.
It takes us out of nature, the natural world, which natural law is essentially part of.
Well, hold on. Let's not confuse anything, because natural law has nothing to do with the natural world, like going outside. Okay? Natural law has everything to do with sovereignty. Okay? That's what natural law is. Natural
Well,
law...
the sovereignty is separate from the natural world?
What is it? Let me put it this way. Like, individual sovereignty is not... What's the word? It does not equal nature outside. Yes, there is a natural order to the universe. There are universal moral standards and like universal laws that work in tandem in our universe that provide justice for us and do everything already for us. It was already here before we were even here. Okay? And anything we built over that is just a mockery to the creation that we come from. If I put it in that terms. Now, let me just go to something really quick. The word government itself. Just listen to the word and understand how our words are being used against us. Government in Latin is actually two words. In Latin, government is gubernare. Gubernare meaning to control. And then the other half, ment in government, ment is actually Latin, or from the Latin word mens, which means the state of or the mind of. So government in etymology standards translates to mind control. Government requires brainwashing and mind control and indoctrination to stay in control and in power. Whereas natural law, natural order, and all that stuff, I know everybody wants to think of trees and birds and stuff, does not require any of that stuff. Like, it doesn't require brainwashing. You can come into knowing it by directly exercising your rights.
Now, I take issue with trying to separate it. It's because there really is no civilization without some form of consensus.
Mm-hmm.
But that consensus comes in the ways of indoctrination.
Right. Not all
Everyone's
slavery
always
is
being
created
taught
equal.
something, and that teaching is being passed down. So even if it's the best teaching, it is itself an indoctrination.
Right.
But not everyone gets the right teachings, or I'm just going to use the word right. Not the best teachings, not the most distorted teachings, the most heresy, right? Everyone's getting a different teaching. And so how does voluntarism fit if you can't really indoctrinate the entire society? There's going to be communities by the natural law that will be indoctrinated to feel and act a certain way. Being a community has to steal, has to fight with their neighbors because, well, they have to survive, and they've come to an agreement that their survival is crucial, and they are free to do what is necessary to stay afloat.
So again, natural law is based on human nature, not on culture. So we're not looking at man-made ideologies or man-made fictional things that are being used to create law like positive law uses, okay? Positive law uses a lot of fiction to create its policies. Now, natural law is all based on human nature. We're talking about psychology here, basic psychology. How does the person work? How do they operate? Rewards, consequences, all that stuff is all already in there. Okay? So, again, with natural law, the theory of causality, cause and effect. Cause and effect is the justice system itself. For every effect, there's a cause, and for every cause, there's always an effect. You do something, you're going to create a cause. If you do something positive, it'll be a positive cause, and if you do something negative, it'll be a negative cause. If you go and kill someone and you piss off their whole family because you killed someone and they come after you, that is a direct negative consequence to your negative cause.
Yeah, and then a possible negative outcome is that family seeking retribution also gets murdered. And so then that kind of says that the main predator of the whole situation has an opportunity to come out as the victor in this scheme of consequences, the cause and effect. And no one in that society has the right to tell them you cannot be the victor in your wrongdoings. You no one can really come at them because they won. They were the ultimate victor in the outcome. And so this is where we moved away from COVID.
I know.
But I think because you already had transitioned, let's dive into this. I think this is going to be important. Black Lives Matter, Antifa. They feel, right? This is feelings. Some of it's factual to their feelings, but let's just say it like this. They feel that they're being attacked, not only by the government institutions. It's ironic, right? I think you say it best. But they are crying out as their constitutional right that the government has disenfranchised them, has hurt them, so they want their just due. But at the same time, they're using the same tool that's used against them. You say it better.
Okay,
but
yeah.
That's what they're doing, right? They're using the same tool to obtain their freedom. The same tool that's used against them to squash their freedom. Now, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, they believe that they're fighting what is naturally right? The natural law.
They think that they're fighting the real bad guys when they really aren't.
Right. They are and they aren't.
No, they really aren't. They're fighting other Americans. They're not those Americans. Whether you have opposing views, do you know how many? Look, first off, I'm an anarchist. Okay, do you know how many?
I'm staying on the government though. I know what you're talking about, like the Trump supporters. I don't believe in punching Nazis. That's not cool. You can't just punch people because
you can't just go up to somebody and punch them in the face because you don't agree with what they say.
Right. No, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the institutions themselves. Right. They're targeting police. Now those are still Americans. But they represent an institution that oppresses them, quote unquote. So, isn't it their right to pretty much clash with a force?
Right. So let me be clear. So I do not condone violence. Okay. So I don't condone violence of any type. I don't believe in using violence to bring about peace because that's not part of my philosophy. But now, if we're talking about bringing about a revolution and all this crap mumbo jumbo, which is never going to happen because everybody's still mindless, if Antifa was really doing us a service, aside from going after the police, you would think they would be at every bank, every state level institution, but they're not. Okay, they've all been caught destroying private property, businesses, and all sorts of stuff. So it's like they don't even know who the hell they're fighting anymore. When I was in Anonymous back in 2010, okay, and this was back when you guys had just started to get to know me when I started more in college and all this stuff, I was running around with Anonymous for a while. I was in Law Sec, okay? That was one of the sects that we used to pull pranks on people. We pulled pranks on the religion of Scientology and stuff like that. That's all we did was just pull pranks. I wasn't like a fucking hacker that can sit there and hack the NSA and all that stuff. I just pulled pranks on people. So when I ran with Anonymous and Antifa first started coming around online and I started noticing them on 4chan and all that stuff, I did not think much of them, okay? I really didn't think much of them. Okay, because they also promoted the same ideology of, like, the government's too big, they got too much power. And I sat there and I'm like, I could totally agree with them. But I don't agree with how, just like Hitler, everybody says Hitler was right to be mad at the Jews or whatever. But then they say, oh, but how he went about everything was just wrong. Okay, well, Antifa's no different than Hitler. They have a good idea. They just don't know how to follow through with their idea in a positive way. All they know how to do is destroy everything that they come in contact with and then claim it as a victory when they're destroying their own community. And that's not just them, it's also Black Lives Matter, because here's the thing, at the end of the day, every individual has the opportunity to bring themselves out of the lowest up into the highest. They really do. I used to be homeless. I lived on the street for a long time. And all of a sudden, where do I come out owning 2 apartments, an office, and all this other stuff? How do you think that happens? I didn't just go ask government to give it all to me. I went and I worked for it. I took myself and brought myself out of the streets, out of living in the woods, out of doing all that stuff on my own with the help of my friends and the support system. These people don't do any of that. They don't help their community. They don't reach out to anybody. They don't provide any services, any real, goods and services to contribute to society. They just rather sit there and say, you owe me, you owe me, you owe me, rather than instead of how can I give back to our community what was stolen from us in the first place? How about putting that back?
So I think it's important to what you're saying. As the collective, I don't see them doing those things that you mentioned. As individuals, we really can't say if individually they're contributing. I think it becomes toxic when they become that collective, because yes, they do harm. Individual levels, we don't know what they're contributing.
If they really wanted to help out their cause, okay, if they really wanted to help out their cause, they would just be at the protest, making sure that the police aren't trying to take away our guys when they're protesting. That's it. Not bricking out people's stuff. And I'm talking about this shit's been going on since the Occupy Wall Street back in 2012, 2013, when we really hit our peak and Antifa was really on the boots on the floor when they were actually a decent organization before they got corrupted and they became too big.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely this collective, at least in mainstream, even on the how we talk about third-party outlets, they're not making themselves look good. But what I really want to take this opportunity, and you can help me understand it more, is that for Antifa, Black Lives Matter folks, people that are on the left right now that are contributing to these protests and or riots, it seems that they have an ultimate opponent, and that is the police and anyone who backs them. Now, for them, it seems for me, the way I would put it, is that survival is crucial. They've convinced themselves that anyone who backs the blue and the blue themselves, they're the threat to our way of living. They're the threat to our prosperity. And so if that narrative is taken serious, where does the survival stand? Where does the means of defending themselves against what they view as an oppressor, an opponent, an attacker? Where does their natural right rest in all of that?
Well, the minute your right is violated, the minute somebody touches you without your consent, that's where you have the right to defend yourself. Push them off of you, take them away, go walk away, or whatever you need to do to get rid of them.
What about the systemic part about it?
Now, again, we, the people, legitimize their use of violence because we allow them to. Okay? We're not, of course, we don't hold the police officers accountable ever for anything that they do. But we still allow them to exist in our society as a position. At this point, I'm a firm believer that the people are the police, okay? The people is the police. The boots on the ground, the people, everyday people, they need to learn to police themselves. Because at the end of the day, no one has a higher claim to your life, your body, your living situation other than you. No one has a higher claim to that other than you, okay? And when you outsource your self-defense to another person, you're basically saying that you don't value your life enough to fight for it yourself. You'd rather hope and pray that somebody else is going to come and save you, which will always leave you open to the savior fallacy that someone's going to come and help you. That's how you create victims. And our system...
Black Lives Matter and Antifa,
they're in a very much victim mentality. They want to be the victims.
Yeah. But they also want to use the same tool that was used against their prosperity.
And then it's never going to work for them. You cannot fix government with government. You just can't. You can't fix a broken arm with the other broken arm. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to work. You can't just, and people who believe that you could go inside and change it from the inside are also delusional, because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, period. Okay? I don't care what person you think you have faith in that's going to be benevolent. They mean to govern us. They mean to own us. I don't care how benevolent they try to go up there and act, and what they promise, and these political promises that they give us, that of security. You know, I'm gonna, if you elect me and you put me in power, I'm gonna give you this. It's like, I could have already given that to myself anyway. I could have done that myself. Why do I need you? Like, that's why when people say, I gotta vote for the president of the United States of America, like, they're talking about God himself. The president of the United States of America, the leader of the free world. Oh, that oxymoronic term, you know? You know, it's such a, what's the word? It's such a inside out, upside down way of thinking. Oh, the only way I can do anything in my life is by picking somebody that's going to tell me what to do with my life. Where are you going in life that requires you to need a president? Where are you going in life that requires you to have a senator and a representative? You know, most of the decisions that these people are making the policies on are personal decisions that people need to make for themselves as individuals.
And so we saw that Black Lives Matter protesters, activists, and maybe Antifa members in Portland, Oregon, they attempted to take control. I mean, obviously they were still taking control in areas that were privately owned, but they were also taking control of public space, and they were keeping out the police because their position was defund the police. Trump had to send in, federal officers in there because they were defacing government-owned property.
And they
Trump
should. And that's perfectly allowable. We pay for that property. We should be able to mess it up if we want.
So they were taking this position that they wanted to be their own collective and push out the police. Of course, their demands trickled back into that the government do things for them. But I like to focus on this police part, because would it not be their natural right to exile the police force?
Yes.
And any of their opponents that back the police force. So that goes back to the violence that they use against Trump supporters, as we've seen in D.C. recently.
Well, if they're not happy with the police force, they really shouldn't be using them to acquire whatever it is that they're trying to acquire. You know? If you don't want the cops protecting the free speech of your opponent, then you obviously don't want the cops to protect your free speech. See what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm still fixated on this idea that they are fighting the police and they're fighting the supporters of the police. I don't agree of using violence.
Right.
But where does it lie in their right to use violence against something they see as violent, as an opponent they see as perpetuating violence? So if I'm a Blue Lives Matter supporter, the opponents, the Black Lives Matter activists, the Antifa activists, they're going to say, you are siding with the violent perpetuators. Therefore, we have rights to use violence against you because you're threatening our lives by backing up the blue.
They can't do that because you yourself didn't do anything to them directly. Supporting somebody, just because you support somebody doesn't mean you're enacting like direct violence on them. You're not. So in that case, yes, they are wrong. They cannot just use unjust force and violence against another peaceful person. If somebody's there disagreeing with you, but they're being peaceful about it, then no, you cannot use unjust force or violence. Now, right. So that's why, in a way, like I denounce Antifa as an anarchist. I definitely denounce Antifa because I do not approve of their guerrilla tactic warfare of how they go about doing stuff. They do destroy a lot of private property because they feel that everything should be commonly owned when no, it cannot be commonly owned when people acquire things individually. You can't force somebody who has something that you don't have, give it to you. You just can't do that. You have a wallet, Tony, I want. Do I have the right to take it from you? No. If I get 30 people to agree with me to take it with you, can I still take it? No. It's still no. No means no. Like, you can't just force things out of people. You cannot use the illegitimate use of violence to get what you want. I like even with my stupid link card. Do you know how many taxes they have to extort for people just to issue me one set of benefits every month? You know what I mean? People who work for their money, who have the money to feed themselves, and now they're being forced to take it to feed me. How is that okay? When I should just be able to go out there and make money myself and figure it out myself. And people ask me, well, Anne, why do you even have a link card in the first place? And I still go back to, well, you have no problem having given all this money to politicians. Why am I the problem?
Right. I paid into this system. So, I mean,
I did too.
Why the hell shouldn't I be using my own money?
Yeah, I feel the same way too. I paid into the system for many years. And if I use my benefits, why should I be demonized for it? You know? That should never happen. And in this case, the Antifa's doing the same thing, though. They want to get rid of the police, but then yet want to use the police to enforce what they want. You cannot have it both ways.
They think so. They definitely think so. And I'm in agreement that the use of violence to pretty much the mob rule, it makes me uncomfortable. I share certain things with these individuals. I really do, and it's hard to swallow because, you know, in these days, if you identify in any way, as we discussed before, that label could hang on you heavy. And because I align myself with a leftist view of the world, I am maligned with the Antifa folks, the most extremities of the Black Lives Matters people. I'm with you, right? The ideology itself.
Right. Like I said, I'm okay for the ideology. I've read a lot of their stuff. They do align with a lot of the stuff that I came to know and what I understand. But their, like I said, their execution is completely corruptible. Because think about it. These people get large donations from corporations. Now, let me just bring you back to when they started rioting in Chicago and started destroying businesses. I remember I saw on Facebook, one of my friends was posting, and they're like, oh my God, they destroyed the McDonald's Make-A-Wish Foundation. How dare they, and this and that. McDonald's donated billions of dollars to these people for them to go break their stuff. Okay? So that they could look like they're the victims. Follow the money. That's all you have to do is follow the money. Whenever you see something, an event going on TV, and the news is broadcasting it on every channel, you're like, well, what are they really trying to distract me from? What's going on in the back somewhere that they're trying to throw these riots and protests and stuff in my face? What are they really trying to distract me from? Play the game, follow the money. And you'll see how quickly where all the money is going to, where is it coming from, and who benefits from all this chaos. They need to bring chaos into our society. You know, our owners themselves practice forms of natural law and anarchism themselves too. Because they also understand the concept that in order for them to build in the new, they got to destroy the old. You got to get rid of the old. And that's what they're doing right now. They're trying to get rid of all the old social norms that we had. They're trying to get rid of all our old, the holidays and stuff that we had. Like all our old social norms, they're trying to flip it on its head right now. Okay? In order for them to do that, they have to create a lot of chaos and a lot of, distraction. Because right now in the back, what do we see that's going on in the background with all these riots and protests? We got Pfizer coming out saying that they got a VAXX. We got Moderna coming out saying they got a VAXX. We got, Warren Buffett making $10 billion in less than a day because these companies announce that they made the VAXX. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much crap going on in the background that we're so busy looking at these riots and protests, thinking that this is what's important going on right now. Oh, police brutality, this and that. When we don't even look at the chains that are oppressing us all the way, extending all the way back to the banks. That the banks that give the money to these townships to employ these police officers to oppress us. It's all a trickle-down effect. It really is. It's it's a right side up pyramid, you know. At the top, you have the 1% controlling and dictating the bottom 99%.
At the end of this, because I want to get your final thoughts before we wrap up. These ideological clashes, it seems, while the media perpetuates it, the government is a deeper sponsor of all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It seems these ideologies are not some kind of new creation. It seems they're going to spur naturally within the human world.
No, actually, a lot of these ideologies have been around since ancient times. I
Right.
can even go back and tell you that communism came from ancient Egypt, believe it or not.
And so that was minus. Are you saying it's minus systems, or that was what occurred naturally?
No, that was when like all the all the systems that we live in now are evolution, like evolved versions of older versions of itself from back in ancient times. So we live in a democracy, right? So back then we had kings and priest kings and god kings. Now we got presidents, prime ministers, and all whatnots you call them now. You know what I mean? They take this. The one thing I've known about government and what I've seen in history and stuff like that is what it does is once we get rid of it, and every time we have gotten rid of it, it always manages to find a way to repackage itself in a new wrapping and a new bow and call itself something else.
So here's where I'm getting at is that our individuals and communities, are they incapable of creating their own ideologies?
No. They should be able, like most people go their entire life without even having one original thought. And if we actually allowed individuals to start making their own decisions without worrying about the government coming after them, whether they make a good choice or a bad choice, will allow that person to directly be responsible for said choices, and they would be allowed to develop themselves through those choices, whether they be a good person or a bad person. Okay?
Well, who would set up those foundations? It seems like
But that's the thing. You can't.
The government plays pappy.
The minute you try to set
and the family.
The minute you try to set a standard for everyone is when you're exercising control. And you have to be able to do
that themselves, though.
They have to do it themselves. People need to be left with their own choices and the consequences of their choices. They have to.
Yeah, that's
like,
where
for
I'm
example,
getting at
like
now, is that
when people ask me, but without government, how do you stop the giant KKK army from coming through your town? Or how do you stop Genghis Khan from coming through? And I say, man, that guy, he's back from the dead again? And I'm like, you know what I mean? Because that's always been the common misnomer. Yeah, that's always...
scenario is recently. It would have been a different reason, but let's say Trump supporters, maybe they actually believe in something. They don't just believe in Trump, but they believe in Christian values in their own narration of Christianity. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, they believe in a more humanist, a secular world. And so those are two different ideologies. Who stops those ideologies from clashing in a voluntary society?
The individual. Everything will be brought down to an individual level. So let me just put it this way. If you're a white supremacist, you're allowed to exist. Just as much as a Black Lives Matter supremacist really is allowed to exist. As long as they're not being violent towards anybody, you can be a KKK member, okay? As long as you're not, I mean, When's the last time you saw the KKK? I remember, what was the last time I saw the KKK come through Berwyn? I was like 8 or 9. That was the last parade they ever have here. When do you ever hear about the KKK anymore? You really don't hear about these guys at all. Like all of a sudden it comes back out because it's part of the narrative. You know, you could go on their websites, you could go on their thing. You don't really hear nothing out of these people, really. Like, they themselves obviously calmed down since after probably the Mississippi burning. You know what I mean? They probably realized, okay, you know what? We really fucked up. We're going to have a whole bunch of mob of people after us. We need to calm the heck down. You know, right. I think over time, things started changing for these people. And I think that as long as, look, if you want to be part of a hate group, be part of a hate group. Because the natural order in life is that whenever something is created, the opposite and polar opposite is always going to be created in its place.
So then that's what I'm getting at. A hate group activates a righteous group. I don't know how to call it. What's the opposite of a hate group? An anti-hate group?
The anti-hate group. So then, yeah, but see, that still causes, that still plays into polarization.
But the people themselves created that. Now the mainstream is out, the government is out, and now individuals are creating this themselves, which naturally occurs. Who does something about the violence that begins to emerge between these competing ideologies?
I'm sorry.
Because in D.C., 20 people were arrested. There's a lot of footage showing that the left attacked Trumpers, and then there's footage of them actually brawling. So it's hard. People are saying, you know, the right is violent, and then it's evidence that the left is violent.
And the way how I look at it, and from a voluntarist perspective, I see it as two adults fighting.
Oh, like a street fight, like, and everyone's just
it's
coming
no
around
different
watching.
than going on World Star Hip Hop and watching people cheap shot each other. You know what I mean? At this point, like, from a voluntarist perspective, you just see two people fighting. The fact that we want to label them and say left, right, this and that, like, all these labels is really what's destroying, like, individuality in the first place. I am an individual. I come up with my own opinions. I have my own thoughts and my own ideas. I should not feel that I have to conform to a set form of ideologies or beliefs or policies or guidelines or certain immoral dictates of my oppressors just to feel like I'm part of society. Like, I think I contribute as a voluntarist here in Berwyn. I think I contribute to a lot of work that I do here in my community. I take poor people, homeless people off the street on Cermak Rd. I bring them into my house. I feed them. I clothe them. I find jobs for them. I do what every American should be doing, which is have love, have compassion, be open your doors, stop being scared, you know? But they put us in such an adversarial mindset, this versus that, me versus you, us versus them. They put us in that paradigm of of thinking, so that way we can never see who the real oppressors really are. The banks. At the end of the day, all of this goes back to the banks, the Federal Reserve. If you go onto a couple of my YouTube videos, my recent uploads, I actually did a very extensive coverage on Jerome Powell, the current federal chair in the Federal Reserve. How he is basically talking about raising interest rates on our currency because he doesn't want to give out stimulus checks. He's what you call a financial dove, okay? He wants to keep the same amount of money that we have in circulation, but charge more interest on it. Whereas a financial hawk would just keep pumping more fiat into the system, liquidating it and causing it to devalue. So he's thinking that he's trying to make the money more valuable, where in fact it's actually making it the buying power of it towards us Americans, weaker. Like, we can't buy what is it? With $20 that was if you have a $20 bill that was printed in 2010, it's literally worth $7 today. You see what I mean? The buying power, you can't get nothing. Like, when we're living on a false money system, oppression is surely to follow, because they will use our money system to keep us oppressed. We will not have the buying power of to be able to provide for ourselves and give to ourselves the things that we want and what we need in life. We will become the have-nots because they can use the money system against us. At the end of the day, the financial system is the true oppressor of the people. And they pay the cops, they pay the government officials, they pay the lobbyists to pay the government officials. They're the ones that do all that.
So, Anne, this was a great conversation. I think we have to come back and discuss further about the individual, natural law, the transition to a better society, and of course, the very system that is often undermined, the monetary system. I think we could do an entire episode on conversing
that would be great.
that.
We should sit here and do an entire episode on the monetary system and how it's the monetary system is the true tyrant, the true cold, uncaring, the god, they call it the cruelest of all gods, the money system.
Very, very nice way of putting it. Beautifully said about coming together and taking care of one another by our own decision to just see the human in another person. Thank you for those words. Everyone listening, this is the Existentialist. We have our special guest, Anne Arkist. I want to let you know that we appreciate your viewership. I look forward to seeing some subscriptions, some likes on Facebook. That's the Existentialist. And of course, Anne, if you can, let us know, where can we find Anne Arkist again?
All right. So again, I'm on YouTube. You can look me up, ANNEARKIST, Anne Arkist. I also have 2 Facebook pages, one also known as Anne Arkist, the other one under WHAM Radio. And then I do have a website. It will be coming up. It'll be topofthelinepro.com. You'll be able to follow me, subscribe to me directly on there. You'll be able to donate directly to my Patreon. And you'll also have exclusive access to other radio shows on my network that may or may not be featured on YouTube. So right now we're actually considering moving off of YouTube. Maybe, maybe not. But we're looking into alternative hosting services because of the algorithms and the censorship that they have going on.
To shy society.
I've been a victim. I agree.
I wake up in
Alright,
the
everyone.
morning and the first thing
Please
that I
like
see
our video,
is a
share,
bunch of
engage in
cranky people on a
conversation.
full bus
We
with no
welcome it.
seats.
If you
Repeatedly
want to feature
undermining what's
the
included in
Existentialist,
this
or you look
Strangers
more
remain
interested in
blinded to
featuring
existence
joining
and
Anne Arkist,
what's the
WHAM
recipe?
Radio,
Well,
you
taxes
can
and
easily reach out to us, and we'll leave some links
the
below on how to
deadly
reach out to us.
family
We appreciate
habits
you.
take
I'm
place
Tony
when
B.
they hate. The family
Enjoy
will
yourself.
forever hurt.
And this is Anne Arkist coming to you from the dark side of the moon, and we will see you on the next show.
The future replicates the past. A building burns. Fire revenge is pretty fast. War dance. It's a ritual in society. Live in shy land. This is what I describe to be childish.